my name is Mel. This is Create & Company, where we focus on creating more than procrastinating, because what you have in you is important. And that creative project, that dream of yours, it deserves to be out in the world. So let's keep going with this book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. Check this out. We are currently going to be on part 15. That's pages 234 to 251. The first mini chapter is called Point of Reference. And here, Rick Rubin talks about how when you listen to a new piece of art, sometimes you've never heard anything that you can even relate to it. And it's so new, it's so awkward, you don't even know if you like it. And then you keep listening and suddenly you might love it. And so he's reminding us that sometimes things, pieces of art, styles of art, our own creative ideas, they suddenly pop out without a context. And he's encouraging us here to not discard them immediately, to not think that because we don't immediately like something, that it's not worthy of exploring. And what I thought was cool is that he says that a strong response, even a negative one, could turn out later to be a very positive one. So let's say you think you don't like a work of art, later you could really like it. He says, be aware of stronger responses. If you're immediately turned off by an experience, it's worth examining why. Powerful reactions often indicate deeper wells of meaning. And perhaps by exploring them, you'll be led to the next step on your creative path. So he's reminding us to allow those things that don't fit to reach us. He says, sometimes the ideas that least match our expectations are the most innovative. By definition, I like this part a lot, I got it sticky. By definition, revolutionary ideas have no context. They invent their own. Now, what ideas have you been shunning or ignoring because they seem too out of context? Maybe it's a whole different art style for you. Maybe it's an idea that's been knocking on your heart door, and yet you thought, wait, I don't understand this idea. It doesn't make sense to me yet. Well, keep it in your ideas journal. Give it another chance. Okay, next mini chapter, non-competition. For a lot of us, a lot of creatives tend to get stuck because we're scared that we will be compared to our peers or to who came before us or to who will come after. And I love that he put this in here because as someone who helps creatives recover from perfectionism, overwhelm, overthinking, creative block, etc., this is a key point, to not view creativity as competition. He says art is about the maker. Its aim is to be an expression of who we are. So he asks, have you ever heard this before? He asks, how can I compete against you if I'm expressing me and you're expressing you? They're two different, it's like saying apples to oranges, you can't compare them at their core. He says that this makes competition absurd. Every artist's playing field is specific to them. You are creating the work that best represents you. Now he anticipates that people might push back and say, well, doesn't greatness come from competition, from wanting to be better than that last person or to make a name for yourself compared to someone else, right? Like it might, look at sports. We think that it's the competition that's inspiring people. But here, I like that he gets quite direct and frank and says that even though in some cases that might seem like what's happening, he says that in most cases, the energy of competition oscillates at a lower vibration. So those of you who believe in energy and vibration, or not even believe, those of you who are aware that everything is energy, he says competition's a low energy. And wanting to outperform another artist or make a work better than theirs rarely results in true greatness. And I know, my friends, I know you, if you're watching this and you're on my channel, you want greatness. You want to live a life of greatness. So let's see what he says. He says, why would we want to create with the purpose of diminishing someone else? Being made happy by someone else's best work and then letting it inspire you to rise to the occasion, on the other hand, he says that's more of the goal. So there is a subtle difference between competing because you just want to blow them out of the water and be better than them and take their shine, their, what's it called, spotlight? Or do you simply want to collaborate energetically? Do you want to be inspired by them? He says that true back and forth creative energy exchange between different pieces of art or creatives is based on mutual love. And we are all the beneficiaries of this upward spiral towards magnificence. So here we're talking a win-win-win. Great art gets created. You are sharing love with the other, and the other is receiving and sharing love with you. Okay, and then he ends this mini chapter with the consideration that maybe if you finally let go of competing with others, you might still be competing with yourself. And he says even that is a fallacy or a misdirected form of putting your energy. He says, look, every time you create a work, that's the best work you could have created in that time, because that was a snapshot of you then. So don't try to compete even against yourself. He says what you can glean or celebrate from a self. Well, I thought this was interesting. I do have a question for you, Rick. You do at the end of the chapter say self-competition. So you say to not compete against yourself in some senses, and then you use the word self-competition. But I did put a red sticky on this last sentence. You said, task yourself to go further and push into the unexpected. Task yourself to go further and push into the unexpected. Don't ever stop at greatness. Venture beyond. Venture beyond. And so for all of you watching this today, my question for you, for journaling, for meditating, or in the comments below or emailing me, is what would it look like for you to push into the unexpected in your creative journey? Where are you stopping usually? Where's your limit so far? And what is beyond greatness for you? How would you define that? How can you imagine that? We can only go as far as our imagination. So today's activity from this mini chapter for you, from me, is what would be beyond greatness for you in your creative journey? Okay, the next mini chapter on page 241 is called Essence. Essence. What a nice word. And he defines essence as the isness of your work. He says that all the work we do, no matter how intricate, holds an underlying essence, a core identity or fundamental structure, like a skeleton supporting the flesh. So this was a very cool mini chapter for me because he got us to question, and I'm going to pass that question on to you as another activity. I would love to hear in the comments below. What is the essence of your current creative project? And the way he tells us we can find this is to strip away, strip away, strip away. And that might mean saying it more simply. That might mean taking away more techniques, depending on what discipline you're in. Just how can you boil it down? Have you ever boiled down tea? Or, that's how a lot of alcohols and perfumes are made. All the water and the other things evaporate, and then you have this more pure essence. So the verb he uses, which is powerful, is to distill. I'm going to read this quote. Got a red sticky. Distilling a work to get it as close to its essence as possible is a useful and informative practice. Notice how many pieces you can remove before the work you're making ceases or stops to be the work you're making. So that's his equation. That's his recipe. I highly recommend you do it. I'm going to play with this as well. And he gets more technical when he says, if you have two units you want to put together, whether it be two sentences, part of a song, etc., there can be a tremendous amount of power in doing so without using a transition. So now he's getting very, very creative with creativity. How can you get to the core of what makes your art your expression? And he responds to, if you're worried that you took too much out, he reminds you can just put it back in. That reminds me of when I was so scared to move internationally, and a friend of mine said, you can always move back if it's not for you. So give it a go, and you can always put the stuff back in. Here's a quote at the very end by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is the author of The Little Prince. Perfection is finally obtained, not when there is no longer anything to add, but when there's no longer anything to take away. Caveat, there's no perfection. I mean, we have that conversation a lot in the creative accountability, creative coaching space, because he said even at the beginning of this book that the human imperfection is what makes art so relatable and beautiful. So maybe instead of perfection here, I would soothe it to mean fulfillment. All right. The last mini chapter we have on our hands is Apocrypha. Apocrypha. For those of you who might know how to pronounce it, help me out here. And he says that every artist has heroes. So before I summarize this mini chapter, comment below, who are your creative heroes and why? Okay. Now, to summarize this, he says that don't put them on a pedestal though, because often when you look to what you think was their creative process and you want to mimic it and match it and follow the same steps, you don't even really know what they did or how they did it. And they don't even know, he says, because often it is such a mysterious, inspired, received, and non-linear process that they might not even be able to truly relay to you how they did it. So, I mean, it might seem like a, hey, you're on your own, buddy, kind of summary, but he's trying to get us to not mysticize these people. And he says, don't turn them into deities. They never existed as such. Expressing yourself is all that matters. And all art is like poetry, he says. We may think we know what art means, like even art we made. We might think we know exactly what that means, and then we change our conclusion later. So he's saying, like, even if an artist thought he understood his process or he understood the essence of his work, they might get a totally different interpretation later. Here's a couple quotes from this mini chapter. We are the unreliable narrators of our experience. And then he says, legendary figures in art and history are sometimes held up as deities. It is counterproductive to measure ourselves against them because they never existed as such, as I said that earlier. So he's almost trying to remind you, like, well, the way I interpreted this is trust your own process because it's yours for a reason. Trust your intuition, trust those jolts he's been talking about, that full body yes, trust what takes your breath away, trust, and then play with all these techniques throughout the book he's been sharing of how to switch up the rules, switch up the points of reference, do things differently, act like you're doing it for the first time, temporary rules. He's given us a lot of very useful steps to step on. He ends this by saying, let's make art and let others make the stories. Let's make art and let others tell the story. So as maybe you become the hero for someone else, you won't even be able to tell that story. Your story might be misinterpreted the way many artists' stories are. And he's saying, don't even worry about it. Keep going and make your art. We are dealing in a magic realm. Nobody knows why or how it works. And you know I like the word magic and I like the feeling and the flow of magic, so I sign up. I'm on his side with that one. There are sides. I just totally agree that nobody knows why or how it works. And yet we're working it. Let's work it. Okay, so I'll meet you back here tomorrow, or if you are just clicking forward on all these, that's how I watch a lot of videos. So welcome to the overflow of the Creative Act. In that case, you're about to listen to a mini chapter called Tuning Out. You're going to tune in to tune out. Well, it was fun to have you here on our International Virtual Forever Book Club. Be a part of the community by subscribing, that's a way to show me that you like this kind of stuff so I can make more of it. And if you email me, I will let you know what coaching I have available. Drop box below for all the most updated stuff about that. I specialize in helping creatives keep creating with flow, confidence, focus, and some magic. Bye.